All right, Middlecoff, let's start with our buddy. Let's go out to Matt Mayoko.
Yeah.
Like the old days. Who talked to Jed York. And, there's several quotes from Jed that have been going around from their conversation. And you can check out Matt's podcast and for that. But they're all in the same vein. And so here's what he said on 49ers Talk with Mayoko. We've talked about this internally. If we're in a situation where Jimmy goes out and takes us to the Super Bowl and again and has an MVP caliber season and does it again, there are worse dilemmas to be in, and Jimmy certainly has the ability to do that. In other words, what I think the other thing he said that got a lot of attention was basically, hey, if Trey Lance has to sit for 2 years because Jimmy's playing really well, we're open to that possibility forcing itself upon us.
Okay, let's rewind to the first comment before we get into the could he sit or not. The first comment, when he just throws in the word MVP type season, I think we have to go back to when they made the Super Bowl, and it was an incredible season. They dominated their 2 playoff games. They walked into the Super Bowl. I mean, once they got to the playoffs, it was hard getting that number 1 seed, but once they arrived at the number 1 seed, they didn't sweat much, those 2 games. Really, there was a brief moment in the Vikings game where Diggs scored a touchdown. You're like, I don't know how they're going to cover that guy. And Jimmy threw a bad pick to Kendricks. But other than that, the rest of that game,
brief moment at
the Packers game, ass kicking. Jimmy was not only not an MVP, he wasn't even close to a Pro Bowler that year. I mean, he had moments during the season that were exceptional. His game against the Saints, awesome. His game against the Rams. And to me, probably his best game, given the pressure and what was on the line. And I think any 49er fan, or just it's been a huge rivalry, with the Harbaugh-Pete Carroll days. That San Francisco-Seattle game was big. I'll never forget, because we were waiting to do a podcast, obviously, after the game, on the couch in the other room, pacing, thinking they're going to lose, right? I was like, they are going to lose. Seattle's driving the field, and they ended up making the Dan Bunn stop at the goal line, but Jimmy was, if I remember, it's crazy. I remember.
I love that you called it the Dan Bunn stop. You'd never heard of Dan Bunn's until that play.
Well, because I can't. I'm trying to think of
Dre Greenlaw.
Who was the linebacker that made the tackle? Yeah, Dre Greenlaw. But I don't remember what I had for dinner 3 nights ago. But Jimmy went 18 for 22 in that game. Like, it's crazy the way my mind works. Like, he went 18 for 22 in a must-win game at Seattle when they had beat him earlier. But my point is, like, they went to the Super Bowl when their quarterback was, as a whole, for the entire season, slightly above average, right? Which in the NFL, that's
really good in
like
some
13,
key games.
14, 15. Yeah.
Right? Like the New Orleans game was incredible in that game. Home field.
But it was bad in other games where the
sure.
team carried him.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. I think, to your point, that year, there was a point that year, I think, when I said I thought Jimmy was better than Deshaun. And it might have been wrong at the time. People disagreed with it at the time. Certainly now, in hindsight, it was very wrong. But I think part of what happened, and I'm not backtracking it. Part of what happened was Deshaun has continued to get better. Jimmy did not take another step early last year, partly because of injury, obviously. But before he got hurt, did not look like he was about to take a step. So for Jimmy Garoppolo to put himself in that position, that means that Jimmy Garoppolo, at age
27,
29, 30 in November.
I meant he was 27 in the good Niner year, 2 years ago. That's what I was.
That means that Jimmy this year will take another step, right? What does Kyle Shanahan say all the time? Well, really, when you look at it, he's only played 1 full season. True. But he's been in the league since 2014. So is he about to be better? At this point, I don't think anyone's expecting that. Now, if he's healthy, can he be really good? Can he be solid enough for them? Can he be better than Trey Lance early? Yes, all those things are true. But like, to me, there's a scenario where this team has a really good year. Jimmy's really solid, and they still, like the Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes year, and they still want to replace him. Like, I think, yes. Right? So say that there. Like,
I think if you had the same year that he had in 2019, they probably wouldn't win as many games just because their team's not as good. But they would still win 10 or 11, but they probably wouldn't be 14-3, whatever, in 17 games. That they would still look to replace him. The same exact season the team had, which to me, that's the best case, Jimmy. Like, I don't think you can ask for anything more than what he gave you, right? I think he threw, 13 picks? But like he's never going to be one of those times you look up, you're like, oh, Jimmy's 4-pick season. Like that ain't his deal.
Well, and again, you're probably not going to have that good of a complete team around him, right? Defensively in particular. Maybe you can actually be better on offense, but we'll get to that later. But defensively, you're going to need more from your quarterback. And John, they went to the Super Bowl. He had that year, and they still considered Tom Brady after that season.
Well, to me, the thing is if Jimmy were to have a great year this season, and again, great for him was just 2019, that means his value is somewhat back, and you have to move him. Like part of the reason the Chiefs moved Alex, he was coming off his best season ever. They kind of sold high. I think they got a second-round pick for him. And remember, Washington paid him, but like you couldn't risk. The Niners are okay, I think, big picture, if Jimmy's just average and Trey kind of comes in at a point unknown in the season and just takes over, like some quarterbacks do. Baker did it. Deshaun Watson did it. Jared Goff did it. Like not everyone starts week 1. Some guys start week 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever, right? Depending if the starter's shitty. Then his value was basically just getting you through some rough times, but you're ultimately going to cut him at the end of the season because no one's trading for a guy making $20 million next year, right? He's getting cut. Like that, to me, that is the most realistic option right now is more than, if I had to bet, does he end up getting cut after this year or traded? I would lean cut just based on previous history. He gets injured a lot. His plays up and down. Now, if he plays well, 17 games would be an outlier situation for him. It's happened 1 year of his – hell, the 4 years or the 4 games he filled in for Brady, he got hurt in the second one. So you would just assume he's going to get injured. Them being able to trade him for an asset, to me, would be on the unlikely side. He had a little bit of juice this year, which I think was pretty clear teams were not going to give the Niners anywhere near. Now, they had a position of quote-unquote leverage, but if I told you the best offer they received for serious teams was like a 4th-rounder, would you believe that?
This past year?
Yeah. 5th?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they got offered a 4th-round pick.
Yeah,
Would you offer
for a guy that's injured, $20 million? I mean, I wouldn't if I was a GM. I get why they asked it because they are now, they were cool with keeping him. But
he's more valuable to them than he is to other people. They've already invested in him, so he's more valuable to them than he is to somebody else.
But if he can't have the season that he had in 19, his value around the league goes up a little bit because when he started 16 games, he was better than half the league.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, if and maybe this is not a fair comparison, if Jordan Love if they looked at him the way they looked at Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, then it would be an easy decision for the Packers if they thought Jordan Love was about ready to become a true franchise starting quarterback, right? Part of this is if Trey Lance is ready to roll, even after Jimmy Garoppolo has a great year, what's his great? Like, Aaron Rodgers' great was MVP, right? We have not seen anything near that level here from Garoppolo, even though he's clearly, when he's good, he's a top 18 NFL starter, top 15 NFL starter.
And like you said, the Niners value, Jimmy Garoppolo's value to the Niners, they've been around him now for 4 years. Like in defense of the Packers, if LaFleur and Jerry Krause told you right now that a.k.a. Gutekunst was like, honestly, guy, we liked him coming out. We don't really have any clue what we have, right? We just had this kind of abbreviated season. We were trying to be an elite team. We just had to roll. We don't even know. The Niners go, we know what we have in Jimmy when he plays. Like, they do know, right? They're comfortable. Yeah. They've seen him every day for however many years.
Yeah.
And he's played a decent amount, right? He's a flawed player. But his play, I think sometimes, like, Jed, like, could he win an MVP? I don't even know. I mean, I get what Jed's trying to say. I just think sometimes, and I think Jimmy's a great example, once you're like 30 years old and you've had – I don't know, 3 elite coaches, Bill and Josh. And Josh, I don't know if he's a good head coach, but we know he's a great offensive coordinator. And Kyle is a great offensive coordinator. Like, it doesn't get his coaching for 8 years, because sometimes you get like when Steve Young came to Walsh, it's like, the USFL and the Bucs, it was a disaster. Well, this guy, the coaching doesn't get any. It's not like, he's had Freddie Kitchens, Singletary, and Shermer. Or just village idiots. That has not been the case.
Right.
Like the chances that
and talent around him,
big time talent around. I would bet against a Rich Gannon renaissance from like 32 to 36. Like he really figured it out when he was 33. Because what would Rich tell you? I got in the right spot. I had a coach that believed in me. I had young Gruden and Al, and we had a good team.
Right.
Jimmy's like had all these opportunities, right? Now, maybe Jimmy would say, let's just hypothetically say he goes somewhere else. I would bet against this, but it is possible. From like 31 to 34, he just has a 3 or 4 year stretch where he never gets hurt. And like he's the Washington football team's quarterback, or he's the Carolina Panthers, or whoever, put him on Team X. And he has 3 really, you just go, Jimmy Garoppolo's solid. But that to me is possible. But like, Jimmy's never making a Pro Bowl. I would bet against that.
Right, yeah.
Even though he could, in the perfect spot, if he stayed healthy, could like compete on the fringe of a Pro Bowl.
But I think 2019 was the perfect. Like that was almost as. It's not as good as it gets.
And he was 27 and been in the league for 6 years.
Yeah, it was a really good situation with Kyle, with that defense. Now, part of it was there were a lot of games where you didn't have to do a ton more, right? They were running the ball at a very high level. They were number 1 or number 2 in the league in defense, depending on when in the season.
But I think, hasn't he kind of proven, like you eventually got to just say, and I know you do, but he is what he is. And this is where I think the other teams would be like, well, Kyle, my team's not as good as yours. I'm going to need a guy to have like a month where he's throwing it 45 times a game, and I don't think he can do that. And the coach or GM would be right. Like that, he doesn't have that in the bag, right?
Right. I don't think so.
Because I think his fatal flaw, and this is what ultimately is why Jimmy just would have capped the Niners a little big picture. I just think he is going to turn the ball over, right? I mean, I think he's a guy that's just probably going to throw some
sometimes
picks.
Because of arm, sometimes because of decision making. Yeah, I think one thing we've seen as time has gone on
I'd call him a little bit of a reckless player.
Yeah,
at times.
exactly. One thing we've seen as time has gone on, right, is he's not a flawless decision maker, right? I guess no one's flawless, but for somebody who's not plus arm, plus athleticism, sometimes he needs to make better decisions.
I think Derek Carr is a good example of a guy I think was kind of there at a similar point, 3 or 4 years ago, and he just went to the point where you can call him a little too conservative at times, but you feel pretty good about like that game he had against Atlanta or whatever, where like his big turnover games now feel more like outliers than,
I'll tell you this, John. I want to get back to Jed here, but if the Packers traded Aaron Rodgers to the Raiders, I'd be pretty bullish on Derek Carr's season for 2021 if he were the Packers quarterback.
Yeah.
That team's good. That offense, coach.
One thing in sports, and I think Twitter's a good example of this, like, this didn't age well. Well, if I said it yesterday, I get it. But if you're pulling something that I said 2 years ago, we're talking about players, and they either get worse or they get better. So, like, you can have an opinion. Like 2 years ago, I thought Jimmy Garoppolo I would rather have Jimmy Garoppolo than Derek Carr. 2 years later, I wouldn't even hesitate to take Derek Carr. Like, things change. And I think everyone, and you saw the Niners changed. They pivoted. They're like, yeah, we can't do this anymore. You get more information. Players, you have to look at them like stocks. They're either going up or they're going down. The famous saying in the league is like, nobody stays the same. You only got 2 options. You get better or you get worse. There is no middle ground. And I think the first time you hear something like that, you're like, that's kind of cheesy. The more and more you watch sports, like especially you and I do it for a living and have for a long period of time, but like really focus on like specific individuals, it really is true. And I think older players get to a point where they've always gotten better and then their body gives out. But certain players, like they just get to a point where they just, for whatever reason, I don't know, because it's hard as shit, can't get any better.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, their flaws are their flaws.
And sometimes it's not flaws; it's just physical limitations, injuries, circumstance, situation, whatever. As it relates to Jed, look, Jed does not talk a lot. He did his draft day tweeting. This is owners talk from time to time. He does not talk much, particularly the last few years. To me, this is not an unreasonable. This is a take the pressure off the young guy. If you're going to talk, you're going to get asked about this, and if you're going to answer the question, it's a perfectly reasonable answer to give. If Trey Lance is not the starting quarterback for 2 more years, then I would be stunned. The possibility for that to happen, to me, would be far more about Trey Lance than it is about Jimmy Garoppolo, about him not becoming what they think he can become, than it is about Jimmy Garoppolo becoming, a superstar quarterback in the NFL, and then you'd have a separate problem on your hand.
My educated guess is when they went through the different scenarios, when not only when they made the trade, but when they were telling Jed and they decided on Trey, whether they got on a whiteboard, whether they're sitting there at a conference table, they just have 3 or 4 different options, right? Hell, maybe he just gets to training camp and this guy's so good he starts day one. Jimmy gets hurt and he's thrust in a random week. Best case, he's not ready and Jimmy's healthy and playing well. We're in no rush. We have him under contract for 2 more years. I just think Jed's probably reiterating what his general manager and head coach, just kind of the way he explained I think it's pretty. He easily could have said, if Jimmy goes down like he often does, Trey's got to be ready. But he wouldn't say that because that's a polarizing topic. Do you think they had that conversation?
And it's not the place for the owner to say that.
But don't you think they had that conversation? Like, we got to get him ready because if he's our
backup,
backup,
like what happens if Jimmy gets hurt week 1? Is Trey going to be ready to try and win games? And it's just when you're the owner, you get to ask questions like a fan too. Like, guys, so you like him, but how good do you really think he is? That's what I would ask. Like, Kyle, how good do you think he really is? Like, could he play right now?
You think you'd be a meddler?
As an owner?
Yeah.
Hell yes.
I wouldn't meddle at all.
Oh, I would be
think about
Jeffrey
football.
Lurie on steroids. Absolutely. All right, I've been watching some tape, guys. I watched some YouTube cut-ups. It's only highlights, but I'm pretty sure we want to take this guy in the first round.
I've never watched less tape since I've gotten into this business. I would watch dramatically less than I already did. I'd be in Cabo. I'd be everywhere.
I'm being a little sarcastic, but I'd be in the draft room. Like, that would be the fun of it.
Oh yeah, I'd be in the draft room.
And I would say, like, Coach, what do you think about this guy? Huh? It's a pretty good player. And he'd say, no, I don't like this guy. And then after like 3 years of understanding what he thinks, then I'd start having opinions. Yeah.
Well, you'd go to a draft meeting.
I'd be like David Sampson. I'd have my own YouTube channel. Like, I was just in the draft room, and here's what Kyle and I disagree on.
You'd go to a draft meeting, and by the time like they got to the 3rd round, you'd be asleep in the back.
Oh.
You'd be like, this is boring.
3rd round.
I'm just talking when they're going through the meetings.
2nd round. I'd be like, so we like the running back from Ohio State? And they're like, no, actually, we like the guard from Western Michigan. I'd be like, oh, okay. We're going to watch an hour of his tape now.
Yeah, I'll see you guys later. You guys want me to pick you up any sandwiches? I'll have them delivered because I'm super rich.
Yeah, I'm going to go. I just saw Jimmy. I'm going to go see what he's up to. I'm going to go check in on the quarterbacks.
I'm going to go to the spa down in the building I own, this one.
I'm going to go to the golf course. Everyone there is going to ask me what's going on in the draft room. I just want to have some answers for those guys. I want to have some insight, some takes. I want to let them know, like, oh, we got some red flags on that guy. I don't know. I'd be careful.